Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, Positive Filters, listeners, boys and girls, and people. It's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Filter. I'm joined by a special guest. Everyone's a special guest because they take their time to join me on the show. Now, this is the first time I've actually seen this gentleman face to face, but we were connected by a past guest, Amy Louise, who is really expansive and building a great network of people. And I think I would give her a shout out. This is the second guest that she's connected me with. Another guest that she connected me with was Jennifer Brown and Inclusive Leadership. So, good people know good people, and she's always presented wonderful people. And so when she says, Philip, I have someone that may be of interest to be on your show, I automatically say yes, because if they're connected to Amy, they're good people. But today, joining me on the podcast is Stepan Mekhitarian. I probably mispronounced it. I'm going to let him correct me. I am literally the worst at names, but I met this gentleman. We had a conversation about his journey, his career, what he's trying to do to change education. And I was like, yes, let's definitely talk about that. But before we get into this discussion, Stepan, give our listeners a little bit of a background on who you are.
Sure. Thank you so much for inviting me onto the podcast, Philip. I appreciate it. The last name you nailed, Mekhitarian. I know it's a mouthful, but you got it. So thank you for that. Just a quick background on me. I'm currently the Director of Innovation, Instruction, Assessment, and Accountability over at Glendale Unified in Southern California. My background has been in education for the last 15 years. I started as a teacher, was a school administrator, and ultimately worked as a math coordinator, as a blended learning coordinator, and data assessment coordinator. So it's been I've had my hands in a lot of different things, but the one thing they all have in common is just my desire to really impact public education and think about my own experiences as an immigrant in this country and how public education gave me the opportunities to pursue my dreams and try to make that same opportunity available for everyone else.
Well, I love that. That's a great segue. So you said as a first generation immigrant to the United States, let's take us back to your immigration story and how, the early experiences in American education for you.
Sure. So, my parents fled Lebanon during the Civil War in the 80s. And so my father just called his best friend and said, "Where do you live right now?" And he said, "I live in Pasadena, California." And that's where my dad came. So, had he said, Cleveland, I would have been in Cleveland. And so I just kind of think about all the different things that could have happened to help me sort of, end up where I am at this moment. And it's so much of it is just those little moments that have a huge impact on the trajectory of your life. When we came here, we didn't know anything about the public education system here. And my parents just said, we can't help you. We want to, but we haven't gone through it. So we're going to trust that you're going to do what you can to find your way through, to navigate the process. And we know that, ultimately you're going to be fine. And I had some friends who were in a similar position as me that I met once we came to the US, and we sort of navigated the journey together. We didn't know how, like what college admissions look like, what different majors meant. All that was new to us, but I didn't have an older brother or a cousin or someone or an uncle who I could speak to about it. But we explored it together. I think there was just this commitment to make sure that we're able to navigate the process, because there was a strong desire to make sure that our families were good, to sort of show our appreciation for all the sacrifices that they were making by leaving the country that they know and love to come to another one, to make sure that we have a better opportunity. And I think coming here and not having taking advantage of those opportunities would be a disservice to my folks who had put so much of their lives on hold to make sure that I and my brother had our chances.
I love it. I appreciate that. I think that's a lot of the first gen experience, and particularly the first gen immigrant experiences, that fleeing other countries and coming to the United States, that education, while it's a different experience than your parents, they really care about it. So what grade were you in when you came in here? And while your parents could not support you in a sense of knowing the system, how do they still support and foster your education in other ways with the resources and knowledge that they did have?
So I was 6 when I came to the States, and initially, like I say, there was just a small knit community. My background is Armenian, so we were living in an area where there were other Armenians, and many of them had immigrated within a few years of when we had, and so it helped us to it helped to identify with others that were kind of in your same position, of trying to just figure things out, everything all at once. Education was just one piece. There's making sure you have a roof over your head, being able to make rent, finding a job, taking care of all the paperwork. That's a lot happening all at once. And for my folks, like, they were able to apply for. They spoke to some folks and were able to actually apply for a scholarship for school early on. So during my first few years in elementary, I attended a school that they knew a lot of folks at, so that was very helpful. And then from there, I went on to a public high school, and that's kind of where it was again, figure things out. And they're more than anything, they didn't give me guidance in terms of you should try this now, but it was more just, we're here to support you and we'll do whatever it can. So I remember even when we were really struggling financially, when we first came, we had nothing. My if I went up to my father and said, there's this like an SAT, let's say SAT exam is going to cost this amount, the first thing he'd say is this something that you need in order to keep moving forward? And I'd say yes. He'd say, then just do it. So I think that type of support, and just unconditional, we'll do whatever we can on our end. We may not have someplace to direct you, but we got your back. Just let us know what you need. I think was really key in making sure that I can feel be sort of encouraged to take those next steps and not really step back because I didn't have any support at home.
I love it. Now let's just fast forward. I mean, you're the first gen to go to college. Tell us through that experience. How did you know where to go to college and what to study? Take us to that time in your life.
Sure. So honestly, at that time, it was really all about just keeping the family together. Again, we were going. It was not an easy transition, and so when it came to college, I had a commitment to start a career that was going to help me support my family as soon as possible. And I chose business economics. Attended UCLA. This was my friend and I would just go to our college and career counselor's office. It was a large high school, 2,500 kids. So we would just go there and randomly just grab some of the college catalogs that were on the bookshelf, and that's kind of how we taught ourselves about what different colleges offer, what different majors look like, what type of careers they can lead to. It was all done just through exploration. Anytime there was any type of college fair or some sort of a speaker, we would attend we didn't miss anything, just to make sure that we were soaking up as much information as possible. So ended up going to UCLA, created a program for myself to just go through my undergraduate studies as soon as possible to be able to reach my goal of supporting my family. And after I graduated and went into accounting, ultimately I realized that it was public education that had given me the ability, whether it was at the K-12 level or at the collegiate level. It was public education that had given me the opportunity to pursue my dreams, including supporting my family, making sure they were good. And that's when I decided to do a career transition to education and sort of backpedaled a little bit, explored what becoming a teacher looks like, what steps I'd need, and then started to do my research on credentials and master's program.
Yeah, so take us through that. Like when you're obviously, making those decisions and telling your parents, I'm going back to school. I know you had that unconditional support, but I know, and this is a very stereotypical statement. I've seen a lot of students that are international students that have the pressure of not like chasing your passions, more so chasing, doctor, lawyer, bust, because we did not come over to the United States for you to be an artist. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so they're like, yo, this is a lucrative career. Why don't you do these lucrative careers or stability careers? Because I think the parents understand it. That's their understanding of careers, is that it's sustainable. We're not chasing your passion, but you change to education. So maybe when you were having this dialogue about changing your career, did you get any opposition from your family, or did you get that other support? Like, wow, it's still education, it's still moving forward. Take us through that career switch um, with your family.
Um, that's a great point. And there was a little bit of are you sure? Did I just hear that correctly? Of course, that first came up because especially when you've already gone down one path for
Mm-hmm.
quite a few years, and you had to make that change. It might come as a little bit of a shock. You're going to go back to school, and then while I think the teaching profession itself is very much respected in our community, we all know that teachers are never quite compensated in relation to the work and the impact that they have on society. And so we knew that it would ultimately be, at least career-wise, certainly, a significant pay cut. But that's where I think I was able to share that this is where my passion lies. This is the type of work that I want to do. And yes, it was that passion conversation. And I think once they saw that, it was real. It wasn't just a passing fancy. It wasn't just the flavor of the week. It was, this is definitely what I want to do, and I'm really committed to putting myself behind, my effort behind it, and make it be the best that I could be, and really support kids. They had no doubt about the type of work it would be in terms of the positive impact it can have on society. I think they just wanted to make sure that I would be good. So are you making sure you're good? And then once I convince them that yes, I'll be just fine, don't worry about me. This way I can do what I want and have the impact that I want, while also making sure that I'm fine. I'm not, I wasn't looking for the latest and greatest of everything. So it was totally okay. And, I think after it was maybe only like a month or so of just, are you sure? And then afterwards we were all full speed ahead.
I love it. Now, tell it, like, we're jumping forward. Tell us a little bit of what you do. And I know we connected that you're doing some really innovative and new things in California as it relates to education.
Yeah. So my doctoral studies were on blended learning, which is just for anyone outside education, is basically a way to incorporate technology into the classroom, and to have it create more opportunities for differentiation for students. So instead of, we all know that if we just teach the lesson to the entire class, some students will pick it up, others will struggle. For some, they'll pick it up very quickly. They'll be ready for even more advanced work. And I think the real challenge lies with differentiating those experiences, giving the students who need additional support what they need, giving the students an opportunity to accelerate as well. And even though those are all students in the same classroom, and with technology, we can really make that happen, and really also create discovery type learning activities where students can explore, can really expand beyond just what's in the textbook, to be able to do research, to be able to spread their wings, I'd say, when it comes to their learning, to take more charge of their learning. And blended learning does that. And that was my focus for my doctoral studies. And I've been trying to incorporate those type of ideas in my work ever since. So in this position, we've done several like cohort style trainings for teachers, where we build our capacity with using instructional technology, but also train them on how to spread that word and lead professional development at their own site. So it's not just about supporting the particular teacher who's in that cohort, but helping them become a leader and share that expertise with others. I also strongly believe in using data throughout learning to be able to do this differentiation. So how do I know what each student needs? How do I know what supports students are going to need, or what type of interest students may have, by constantly gathering data and making real-time decisions around it that can help me make my classroom more dynamic, make sure that every student is getting what he or she needs in real time. So I guess to take it to the other extreme, if I don't gather that data and I go a month, let's say, without any real data to go off of, at the end, if some students aren't successful, I may not know exactly where they got off track, or where I wasn't able to give them the support they need. By checking frequently and then making those adjustments, the class becomes ultimately tailor-made for their experience. And so you can't really do that if you don't have technology incorporated into this process, because I need different materials. With technology, they can go very deep into a particular topic. They can do research. A blended learning classroom, you'll see a lot of students doing different things at once. It might look like chaos, but it's not, especially when you go and you talk to every student in the classroom, and you see that every single one can articulate what they're working on, what their strengths are, what their areas of focus are, what kind of project they're creating. And some of the work that we see students produce is just incredible. Like, when you walk into the classroom, you might think you're looking at a seventh, eighth, ninth grade project, and it'll end up being a first or second grade, because we have to remember that students grew up with technology, the current generation, so they didn't transition to it like we did. And so they soak it up very quickly. And a lot of times it's just up to the teacher to be willing to let go and accept that the students can run with some things that the teacher might have the subject matter expertise on, but maybe not the technical expertise. But if you just let the student run with it, you're going to see some amazing learning and some jaw-dropping opportunities to get students, to show off what they know and sort of highlight their passions.
I love it. I love it. That was one of the things I was thinking about, in regards to education, is equity in education, right? Access,
Mm-hmm.
like, and physically, you could tell, like, the buildings and, the books that people have, these are tangible things. But I'm also thinking about digitally. Have you seen some things in your work that needs to be addressed in regards to inequities in the digital education that's similar? Like, bad, old, outdated books could be the equivalent as outdated Chromebooks. It's like, have you, when you're just, developing this curriculum, what are some of the inequities that you try to, like, address to make it, equitable and fair and accessible for all the students, especially in a public school?
Absolutely. I mean, that was one of the driving factors for my career transition, was just make sure that everyone had that chance. Having worked in different parts of Los Angeles, including some neighborhoods that are socially economically disadvantaged, we know that for sure there's a lot of inequity out there, and it's our job to make sure that a lot of it's. I know it's kind of cliche to say education is the great equalizer, but in many ways it is. It offers everyone an opportunity to pursue their dreams, of course, as long as they have access. So I think the first part of that is access. Initially, I think when it comes to just technology in general, not everyone did have access. But one of the silver linings, I guess, of the COVID-19 pandemic is that it accelerated our distribution, our the funding that we received, and the distribution of Chromebooks. So now we're a one-to-one district. Every single child, regardless of background, has access. I mean, we've even gone as far as giving out hotspots too. So if they don't have Wi-Fi at home, if they were having to go to like a Starbucks or something to access the web, now they don't need to. We've provided that as well. So I think just to get everyone on the same page, the fact that we have devices in everyone's hands, I think, is a very, very big step. I'm really proud of our district, actually, because we prioritize that. Our executive leadership team, they really blow my mind with how thorough they are about making sure no one slips through the cracks. So if, let's say, we're going to enact a policy that's going to be beneficial to 99% of our students, they will ask about that 1% and make sure that 1%, how are they going to get what they need? How are they going to be served? And I think that really drives a lot of our work. And it's honestly, it's very it brings a smile on my face, and it's a relief to be working somewhere where that's the type of leadership that I get to collaborate with. And we even have a department that's called Equity Access and Family Education, so we really do prioritize it. I think equity just comes down to I'm sure you've all seen like this image of what equity looks like versus equality.
Yeah.
Equality is just giving everyone exactly what they need, right? But equity is giving everyone what they need in order to be successful, and that goes back to what I shared a few minutes ago about differentiation. Not every student's going to need the same things, and our commitment is to provide every student with what they need to be successful. So part of that means checking for understanding and making sure that they're okay. If I go a full year without really knowing where one of my students is, if I haven't given them what they need to be successful, and I don't know that until the very end, I haven't been equitable, because I haven't provided the resources that they need, the intervention, the support, whatever it takes. Our district, for example, has a large percentage of English learners and a variety of languages too. And so, when students come, I think from my understanding, because of the conflict in Ukraine, we've actually had quite a surge of Russian-speaking and Ukrainian-speaking students join as well. So how are we going to make sure that they're successful? If they can't access content because of the language barrier, that's the first thing we have to address. So in addition to providing coursework on English language development, we train and provide professional development on strategies that teachers can use in the classroom to make sure that everyone does have access. And it could be something as simple as taking the text that students are going to read, hyperlinking words and connecting them to images or translations or pronunciations, and so that students do get more access. And I think the more we do things like that, and incorporate those strategies and show every single student that we care and we are not happy with 99%. We want every single student to come to be successful. I think that really is our ultimate mission, and we're constantly striving for equity because we're not satisfied with most. We want all, and I think that knowing that that's what drives us is makes this a really wonderful place to work.
So I love that, and I love so it's like a lot of overthinking. So I see in that mindset of equity for all that there needs to be a high level of not say vulnerability but self-criticism, right? Like you can't just pat yourself on the back for the 99, right? You always have to be critical and ask difficult questions about like, well, who are the 1%? What about the 1%? How do we help them? So what are
Mhm.
some things, as you think about the changing landscape of education, like what are some questions that people that develop curriculum and develop this, what are some questions, tough questions that they need to be asking themselves as they develop this learning?
Well, I think you're on the money, though. We want to, in terms of when you said just, we want to celebrate those successes, but we also don't want to rest on those laurels until we make sure every child is successful, and that's a fine balance because we also don't want to, go to our school sites and say, well, we got to keep doing, why aren't we at 100%? It's really coming from a place of encouragement and support, but also making sure that our students are successful. So. I'll give you an example. One of our schools, we recently saw some year-end results, and if I remember correctly, it was 84% of students were proficient in English language arts. So what we did was we identified who those 16% were, and we created a game plan for those students. So we go through this what we call a cycle of inquiry, where we'll actually create a strategy, test it out, see how it works for those students, and then come back and see how effective it was, reflect on it, refine it, make adjustments as needed, and do that throughout the year several times, so that we're not waiting until the very end of the year just to find out that some students just didn't make it. So we do ask the tough questions about how are we going to make sure all students are successful. And I think at some point that you have to really, especially when the group's very small, you have to be able to know the students. You have to see the student behind the number. We don't want to just go off of percentages and say we're striving for 100%. What does 100% mean? 100% means 100% of kids, and those kids have names. Those kids have a variety of backgrounds, that they bring to the classroom, and we want to make sure that it's very difficult to have a room full of students with wildly different backgrounds and to all connect to that learning experience. That takes a very, very skilled teacher to do that, and that's why it's so hard to make every single student successful. But by targeting those students and understanding the students behind those numbers, I think that really helps us ask the tough questions about what each student needs, and then tailor make the strategies that they need to be successful for them, and not just assume it works. If it doesn't, for whatever reason, it's not effective, to be open and have a growth mindset and say, I see some parts of this that worked. I have to acknowledge some things didn't, and that means I'm not going to do it a second time the same way because I'm going to get the same result. And to sort of have that reflective quality and make adjustments, because it's really not about me. It's really about the student. My job is not done until my students are successful. In fact, one of our programs here we have in district, the motto is your success is my success. I'm only successful based on how successful you are. So my job is not done until you're there.
I love it. So what about the actual student voice or student participation in the process, right? Like either prototyping on students or focus groups of students or getting their feedback. How's that incorporated? Giving empowering students to have a little bit of their voice in the process.
We have a lot of things in place here to make sure that we hear from students as well as other community partners. So we're launching some community schools this upcoming year. The community schools are schools that go beyond and provide everything that families may need in order to be successful. Like these, one great example I heard when we were learning about community schools ourselves were, if you have a searing toothache as a student, are you able to focus on your math problem that's sitting in front of you? So our job is to make sure not to provide dental services on site, but to make sure that we understand the needs of students that go outside beyond the classroom and connect them to the community, provide whatever services we can to make sure that the student is the students' needs are met so that they are ready to learn. And so in order to identify those needs, we talk to students in addition to parents, in addition to teachers and other staff members. We have student voice panels. We have student focus groups. When we administer social emotional surveys, look at those results both in groups and follow up with individual students if they need additional support. So we're listening to students all the time, and then the blended learning approach is very much student driven. With the blended learning approach, you don't picture like a traditional classroom where the teacher's in front of the classroom teaching to all the students. It's really student driven. The teacher gives a prompt and says, here's what we're going to explore, and then gives students an opportunity to bring in their own background expertise and sort of make meaning on their own way. So just to give an example, let's say the project that we're going to work on today is building a bridge. Today we're going to learn how to design a bridge. The teacher might ask some students to research, why do bridges look the way they do? How come shouldn't there be one perfect design that all bridges look like? Why do they look different? Maybe talk about a bridge that was near your home when you were growing up, and have these opportunities to sort of bring in their own perspectives, and then incorporate with that research the different math skills that they're going to need in order to be able to, let's say, design a bridge, or physics theories in order to make sure that it's going to be sound. Design it. The teacher is going to end up with 30, 35 different submissions and explanations why, and a lot of those are going to reflect the way that students made meaning of that lesson. They all are learning the same theorems and concepts, but they're doing it in a very different way with a lot of student voice, and you have proof of that when you get 30 or 35 completely different submissions from each other. And sometimes some of them will be very graphic, some of them will be more text-based. It doesn't matter. There are many ways for students to demonstrate mastery of content. So it's really up to the teacher to sort of let go, like create the parameters and the expectations, but also give them the space to be able to do that exploration and to bring in their own background. So that, I think, also heightens student voice in the academic setting as well.
What about, and that's my last question before we go on to the next segment, what about for those that are afraid that the changing landscape of education is going to remove the need for teachers? What I mean by that, like technology take over, we're going to just have AI do all the teaching, or have this do the teaching. And I'm an educator at heart. So can you speak to that, like the changing landscape of education, and whether or not, it's going to, not say outsource, make teaching obsolete or change it, or what?
Sure. I don't think that teachers will ever be obsolete. I don't think there will ever be a time when we don't have teachers in the classroom. It is not just about, well, first, not every student's the same. Mm-hmm. Not every student learns the same way. Not every student has the same background. And there are all kinds of nuances that a compassionate teacher will notice and observe and connect with students. Students, you could be the most incredible teacher, very proficient at what you do, have your content down really well, but if you can't connect with the students, then they're not going to learn from you, no matter how effective you are as an instructor. So you have to be able to connect with the students. And once you make that connection, then they'll be ready to receive what you're offering. So I think that takes a lot of skill. It is not easy to be an amazing teacher. It's a very, very difficult job that our teachers just tackle and do jaw-dropping things with. So that connection, I think, will never be replaced. And then finding, again, those nuanced differentiation moments to give students what they need. For me, I remember in my classroom, I would have an office hours full of kids, 25, 30 students, peer tutors helping them out. And every child's need was different. For I also had students where no matter what I tried, I had difficulty challenging them because they were so advanced and they just kind of immediately knew what how to approach a particular problem. This is high school math, so I had to create problems, and I had a special closet that was locked up, and I would make this big ceremonial thing where I'd open up the closet, take out that question, and that's the one they would tackle because that's what that student was ready for. A robot can't do those things. And even if they do, it's not going to be as effective as a teacher. I think the teacher will never be replaced. I think it's important to look at technology as a resource in the same way that the students refer to textbooks or refer to, let's say, manipulatives like building blocks or things that they're going to play with their hands to build something. The device, the Chromebook, is just another resource. So it's not a room full of students staring at Chromebooks while the teacher is seated at their desk. The students jump on the Chromebook, pull what they need, and then jump off of it. So in an ideal classroom, You're seeing students jump on and off, reference it when they need it, just like they reference the book when they need it. Just because they have the book doesn't mean they don't need a teacher. The teacher is still bringing that book to life as using it as a resource when it's needed, putting it aside when it's not.
I love it. I love it. All right. So we're going to go to the part of the show called Shot for Shot. You get to ask me any random question. I get to ask you any random question. You want to go first? I'll go first.
Sure, I'll go first. What attracted you to the role of making sure that students can navigate the career space while they're during their collegiate years?
Oh, okay. That's great. I mean, talking about my elevator pitch of how I got into higher ed, I would say what motivated me is probably because I was that one of those students that needed it myself. I never went to the Career Center at JMU when I went there. I probably needed some career guidance. When I moved back home, I, moved back in with my parents and got my job in education just by happenstance. And it was actually going to grad school and taking a career development class that I was like, wow, there's an actual thing called career counseling and career development in my master's program. And it was that experiential learning, actually doing my internship here at Mason back in 2011, 2012, where I was like, wow, this is something I could have used for myself, but I love doing it and love talking to people about their careers. I love talking about skills and strengths and those things I can nerd out on. And it, like, if all the counseling classes, substance abuse and all the different ones, career counseling was the one that like I gravitated, like I want to do this. Like I didn't really see myself being a therapist or a traditional therapist.
Mhm.
So it was more so my experience in the program, in the classroom, and then actually having a very positive internship experience that, like, you test the waters. And I was like, I really enjoy working in a higher ed institution. And I really like doing things as it related to people's careers. So that's kind of how it happened. It's usually by happenstance. Ain't nobody wake up one day and say, I dream of being a career counselor, like.
Yeah, no, I agree. I never knew I'd be in education. I thought I was gonna be. I think I'd written like zookeeper or something when they first asked me. So
I love it. So off the, personal, what is, like, one professional goal that you have for yourself? I think you already said you already obtained your doctorate. You're highly educated. You're doing a lot. So what is, obviously, as you know, navigate your career, what are some things that you're looking forward or trying to challenge yourself to do?
sure. So I learned long ago, at least for me, that if I think about like the next step, I never quite. There's no linear path, so I don't necessarily. I've stopped thinking about like what the next position or step would be, but I kind of think about my overarching goal of just having the broadest, most extensive impact on public education to impact the lives of as many students as possible. So, while I'm in this role, I've worked quite a bit with the California Department of Education and our LA County Office of Education to share training and resources outside of my district to Los Angeles County, to the entire state, and at the national level, and actually international now. I've published a few books that are specifically on these topics. So one on blended learning, specifically how to use the best experiences from distance learning when we were all working remotely during the pandemic, combining that with the best experiences, most effective practices from in-person instruction, bring them together for like the post-pandemic classroom, which is going to be essentially some form of blended learning. The other ones are on using formative data, so that real-time data approach I mentioned, to be able to constantly know where students are and adjust their learning experience based on that information. So it is very customized. I think that students thrive when their learning is right at their level. When it's too easy or too hard, that's when they start to lose interest. And so if you want to really keep their sustained interest, you want to be right at that level, and you can only do that if you're gathering data from them in real time. So I've got one book on that topic specifically for teachers, and then one for the organizational level for leaders to create systems that allow you to do that. So those are my ways in which I'm thinking as my next step in the career is just, again, broader impact. And the reason I say international is because I was actually able to share some of this with a school in Taiwan. And so I'm glad that, it's a personal, I take a lot of pride in knowing that, the impact hopefully that I'm having is getting more and more broad. And that brings me great joy.
I love it. And actually, that kind of goes into our next segment, which is called shout outs and plugs. So shout outs means show love to anyone you want to show love to. But I think particularly you were talking about that, where can people follow up with you, can get engaged with you, the things you're working on, such as your books, where can they find that? So the stage is set. Shout outs and plugs for you.
Shout outs. I definitely have to go to my parents who've sacrificed as much as any parent can to give me all the opportunities. And to my wife, Laura, who is just so supportive. She's always there. And her amazing parents. I have the best in-laws. We've kind of joked that's, dad number two, mom number two. So I'm very blessed to just have a fantastic family unit that supports me, and I feel their love all the time. So that's my number one shout out. Number two is going to be to the teachers I spoke to when I was considering the career transition, who sort of taught me through the process, told me that you'll get used to waking up early and doing all those things, and sort of guided me through that process, especially as I was navigating a career transition. So that's my second shout out. My plug, you can, I know my name's a mouthful, but if you look it up on Amazon, you can certainly find the books. You can also go to stepanmekhitarian.com. And you can see all that book information. You can see tons of podcasts and articles that are all just accessible right there, all about the work that you heard about today, whether it's blended learning, whether it's instructional technology, whether it's how we transition from distance learning, whether it's on formative data. There's a ton on there, and you can have a way to connect with me from that website as well. You can also find me on Twitter at Stepan Mech.
Excellent. Yeah, definitely gonna put all that in the show notes, and definitely, explore more about blended learning. This is great. Maybe you can give me some coaching as I kind of dabble. I'm learning a little bit more about UX experience. I think that kind of dabbles in to what you're doing, user experience and all that stuff. So we'll stay in touch with that stuff. But Positive Filter listeners, please support Stepan and his endeavors. I'll put all his information in the show notes. Check out his book, check out his Twitter, check out and connect with him. And if you have questions, definitely reach out. If you like this episode, please share it with a family member or friend. Sharing these episodes elevate it. Also, leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts. That helps elevate the podcast as well. And if you want to leave a voicemail for the podcast, it's 571-336-6560. That's 571-336-6560. Every episode is dedicated in honor to my late father-in-law who just recently passed, Jeff Kirsch. I will put in the show notes of this podcast and every podcast the Jeff Kirsch Anti-Hunger Advocacy Fund. Check it out. That's something that's near and dear to my heart. Particularly, he is dear to my heart. So please check that out and support that good cause right there. Thank you, Positive Filter listeners, for listening, and we're out. Thank you for listening to Positive Filter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.